Hi everyone, this is Kim C, and you're listening to the Year of Underrated Stephen King podcast. This is a one-woman Stephen King book podcast brought to you by moi, a university fiction teacher who takes the writings of Stephen King into a vibrant auditory classroom setting for further dissection and discussion that hopefully elevates one's post-reading experience to a more enriched place. The enriched place I've got on my mind today is the American baseball diamond. 'Tis the season, I guess. I'm a baseball fan, and I did used to play when I was an adolescent and teen, and sadly not well by any means, as I was really lacking in the talent department, but I can't help but have the game of baseball top of mind when it comes to introducing today's guest, and I don't think he'd mind in the slightest. Today, boys and girls, we have a batter that swings for the fences and nails it every time. For all of you former baseball-playing kids and/or knowing folks and fans, or those who don't have a clue about baseball, this won't be too bad, I promise. When you have a good hitter, someone who's got a solid track record for really smacking it out there, when they come up to the plate, everyone in the outfield, at least they used to do this when I was a kid, they back up a couple steps to get ready. The infield usually does the same. And this was the mark of a good hitter. Somebody really good at the game. And this gentleman, my friends, today's constant reader interview guest of honor, we need to back up a little bit. Everyone take a few steps back because we have an ace hitter at home plate, and I'm beyond thrilled to introduce him. My guest today obtained a master's degree in mathematics from the University of Vermont, and like my own unconventional self who discovered King after graduate school, his love for Stephen King blossomed in his early 20s. Boys and girls, Mr. Paul Tremblay is the national best-selling author of such epic titles as A Head Full of Ghosts, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, The Cabin at the End of the World, Survivor Song, The Pallbearers Club, and 2024's horror movie that is set to be released this June. He has additional crime novels, The Little Sleep and No Sleep Till Wonderland, short story collections, Growing Things and Other Stories, The Beast You Are, as well as numerous essays and articles, and he's the recipient of such distinguished honors as the Bram Stoker Award, the British Fantasy Award, and the Massachusetts Book Award. He's an educator, prolific horror writer, punk rocker, King connoisseur, and Red Sox fan. Who can beat that, my guys? Well, you can't. You absolutely cannot. So let's back up a few more steps and get ready for this blazing talent to chuck one out of the ballpark. For today's constant reader interview, it is my great honor to present Mr. Paul Tremblay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a tremendous honor to introduce my guest today. This is Mr. Paul Tremblay. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, thank you, Kim. Glad to be here. If my voice sounds extra nasally or gravelly, it's because I'm fighting a cold, but it's okay.
It is. We're happy to have you. Gravelly voice in any capacity.
Maybe I sound better that way. I don't know. Yeah, I hate my own voice, so I don't listen. I tend not to listen to myself talk.
There is something to that. I bet you Roland doesn't exactly have the smoothest voice.
Right. True that. But he probably doesn't have to listen to himself on podcast either.
This is true. All right. My first question for all constant reader interviews, for all fans of King who get to sit on this throne, how old were you when you read your very first King title? What was it?
Yeah, so my exposure to Stephen King's work was definitely movies first. And I'm ashamed to admit, much of a reader as a grade schooler, or even as a high schooler. Like, I was a good student. Like, I did the assigned reading. I know most people didn't, but I did. But yeah, I just wasn't a reader for pleasure. I was too into the 80s Celtics and just watching TV, I guess. I was in math. Math was more my thing then too. But anyway, I would say the first time I tried reading Stephen, I didn't finish it. But the first time I tried reading him was, I was almost 18. It was like 5 or 6 days after graduating. Well, 5 or 6 days after graduating high school, I had major back surgery because I had scoliosis. So I had a spinal fusion where they took bone from my hip and metal rods and and connected it all back there, Frankenstein me together, or straighter. I was 6 foot when I went under and 6'3" after the surgery. So I had to spend that whole summer, at home recuperating. So I'm like, oh, newly out of high school, I should do something adult. I've got all this time, I'm just not going to watch TV. I'm going to read a book. My parents had some built-in bookcases. I always remember seeing It because of the classic 80s paperback cover with the green hand, and it's on the spine too. So I took it out. I read the first chapter and I literally threw it across the room. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be stuck alone in the house all summer and be like terrified. So my first attempt at reading, Stephen, didn't go well. I'd say the second attempt went much better. Oddly, like when I graduated college, my girlfriend, who's my wife now, bought me The Stand for my 22nd birthday. So that's the book that hooked me and turned me into a King reader and just a reader in general.
I love it. So good. I'm also really excited to hear that you didn't find King till a little bit later on. That's huge.
Yeah, like I said, for me, my exposure was movies. Like, I mean, I definitely watched, so I had seen The Shining, Pet Sematary, The Dead Zone, Cat's Eye, stuff that was like played on HBO. Showing my age a little bit, but I was, in my teens during the 80s. So like a lot of that stuff was just, Creepshow, all that. So I'd seen basically all the 80s, 70s adaptations prior to reading. So I was well aware of who Stephen was.
I read my very first Stephen King novella ever at the age of 26. Right after I got my MFA, and I was charbroiled, completely burnt out on very dense lit. Mm-hmm. And then I read Full Dark, No Stars, and it changed my life. And so I really enjoy the folks that didn't really sit down with their first King title until adulthood for the most part, and what that's like. And it seems like you were in math.
I was in math. Yeah, it's how I said it. I don't know what that means. That's really interesting that you came to him like when he had this huge backlist already. So like you had all this to dive into. But yeah, I mentioned I was like when I was in high school, like I didn't know what I wanted to go to college for. I was good at math, so I just sort of stuck with it, and the same thing in college.
How did we go from math grad school mathematics to a very prolific horror fiction author? What was that path?
Yeah, it's really hard to explain. I mean, there was definitely, college for me was like when I sort of blossomed and just had way more self-confidence. I was, not very happy in high school. Like so many people had terrible high school experiences. I definitely fit in that column. So part of it for me was like getting to go and start over in school and meeting friends that had interests with and, weren't assholes.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that just gave me the confidence to be like, wow, I'm really passionate about these horror movies and I'm passionate about like punk music. And, eventually I started reading, King when I was in math grad school. It's like, oh, I really love these stories. I definitely had this want for some sort of creative outlet. So like starting in about like, well, in the mid 90s, I was trying to teach myself how to play guitar. And also after 2 years of reading all the King books and from him going to like, Peter Straub and Clive Barker and Shirley Jackson, thanks to Dance Macabre, of course. I don't know, I just had the weird itch to try writing a story. And it's really almost inexplicable because, even at the time, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Why would you ever write a story? Like you don't, you're not trained in English. You don't know what the hell you're doing. But I don't know. It's just that the stuff so excited me. I wanted to be near it in some way. I don't know. And that's, I think most people start with that feeling and it's a nice feeling. I mean, I just told like a high school class recently, I did a talk. I said, it might seem silly to say, but like, it's okay to like things. It's okay to be passionate about things. Cause I think that's where most writers, artists, musicians start is from this place. Like, wow, this really speaks to me. I kind of want to try that. Even if you don't, there's no way you think you're going to do anything that comes close to that, but you still want to try it.
Oh, so inspiring. I love that so much.
Thanks.
Very cool. My next question, are you a King reader who has read everything? You've got it all under your belt, or have you kind of hopscotched around the last couple of years?
So I did a count. I think I might be one off. So I counted 66, maybe 67, but there are things that I have not read. I haven't read any of the Gwendy Buttonbox stuff. I haven't read Carrie, which is really weird. And I was lucky enough to be asked like a few times, oh, do you want to be interviewed for this 50th anniversary of Carrie retrospective? I was like, I have to admit, I haven't read it. I'm sorry, Uncle Steve. I don't know why. Like, I mean, because that movie was definitely one that was just so indelibly burned into my head. But that wasn't a problem for reading the other stuff. So I don't know. Maybe it's just like, oh, I still have Carrie to read. If I need a King thing to read, at least I have one. So yeah, I mean, 66, 67, that's a lot. So I've definitely read the vast majority. Incredibly, not everything, but the vast majority.
You are up there. I'm around 50s, low
Oh,
50s.
okay.
And I just read Carrie for the first time last November, so I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for you because for what it is, it's impressive. It's
Yeah.
very impressive. Like there's stuff in there that very much ahead of its time, very special.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I guess I can't talk too much about the book since I haven't read it, but it seems from afar, and actually I had fun reading like the 50th retrospectives, both like the Boston Globe, New York Times. It does, I think a few people remarked that like if this were to be published today, it'd probably be published as YA, just because of the age of the protagonist and the concerns in the book and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it's really fascinating how that book helped just not create Stephen King because he was created, but like this, giant pillar. I don't know how many pillars there are, but definitely one of the pillars of modern popular culture.
absolutely. It's one of those that just keeps on giving. You reach for something, you find stuff to explore and study, and you're like,
Yeah.
there's so much here. There's so much here. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you. So can I ask, like, what is there a specific time frame that you're missing, or is it just sort of like all over the place? Not that you're missing a lot, like, but I'm just thinking, not that I'm bragging, but 67 compared to 50 or 51.
I have discovered, for whatever reason, because my whole focus when I started to love King and just nonstop read, I wanted the underrated ones or the less popular, less in
I see.
focus, more in shadow ones. So that's where I started, which I
Oh.
popcorned all around. And I noticed the 90s is a huge hole. Huge hole. I don't know why. I have not tackled a
Hmm.
lot of 90s. And apparently, 90s King is wacky. Good wacky, good and bad.
Yeah.
Needful Things, Desperation on the Regulators, Gerald's Game, Dolores Claiborne. Like I haven't touched them yet, so I have to remedy it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few of those 90s I haven't read either. Dolores Claiborne, I haven't read. Gerald's Game either. My wife so vividly described Gerald's Game to me, like I don't think I had to. I felt like, oh, I don't have to read it. That's interesting. Yeah. I think for me, it's more, well, I don't know. Now it's still spread out. So 90s, maybe early 2000s. Like I haven't read Cell.
Me neither.
That's in the 2000s. That's got to be because it's a cell phone, right? Yeah. Anyway.
You're right. Yeah. I'm similar. 90s, early 2000s, probably from like 2006 on, I'm on it. I've done them
Mm,
all. Really like that when he's starting to feel better post accident. He's kind of
right.
coming out of it. It's really special. It's a really great segment in his career.
Yeah.
There's a big pothole, 90s. Okay, this next question is kind of looking at the 60 plus that you have read. And have you noticed that there might be one or two King titles that you absolutely love? And you're like, this is just great. And you notice just doesn't get the love that you feel it deserves. And vice versa. Is there a King title that is so popular with the masses, but you're like, really? Really? Why?
Yeah. It's funny. Like maybe Mike, because you sent me some of these questions earlier, so I was thinking about, I was like, geez, what if I say something that's not like everyone's like, we all love that one. So I don't know. So I would say to me, I think maybe the top of that list would be one of his later titles, Revival. I think, yeah, I don't know if that's overlooked or not, but I mean, I feel like that should be discussed as like, top five King. It's funny, the first time I read it, I didn't fully get it, didn't fully connect to it. And I'm not sure why. But and the second time was through audio, I was like, holy shit, this is freaking amazing. This is brilliant. And so dark. I love Steven when he goes full dark. We were just talking earlier about No Stars, full dark. To me, like that Revival and Pet Cemetery sort of explore similar themes, but from totally different ages. Maybe now I'm sort of, now that I'm getting older, my kids are older, the Revival sort of outlook on death is more closer to where I am now, as opposed to like when I was younger reading Pet Cemetery. So I don't know. To me, Revival, 100%. Maybe I'll give two more. I mean, one is, I think, he even admits like he doesn't remember much in that book, or it's sort of ridiculous, but I have some love for Tommy Knockers. I think especially the opening. I think the intro is fabulous, even though definitely takes a while to get to the horror-ish part, but I love all the character work. The writer dude at the party and just obnoxious, and I forget the woman's name, but like her discovering, the spaceship and with her dog, and I don't know, all that stuff is really cool. I mean, the rails a little bit later, but I don't know, Tommy Knockers is fun. And maybe one more from the early 2000s, Doomickey. Obviously, a book very much inflected by his experience with the accidents. And again, I think Doomickey, my favorite parts of the book are really like the first almost like 80% until it goes into full supernatural. I mean, it's fine when it does, but the parts I remember of that book are the beginning as opposed, the beginning and the middle and the character stuff as opposed to the end.
Oh, sir, stellar choices. They really got my heart pounding because they're so good. Duma
Thank
and
you.
Revival might be, I think they're both top 5 Kings for me. They are incredible. You're so right about Tommy Knockers. That book is problematic for me, but Bobby Anderson is one of the coolest, most progressive females. She's so ahead of her time. She's so rad, and it's such a messy book, but I didn't mind sifting through it. It's a big garbage heap, but there's some good stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, you had John Langan on before, so sometimes he refers to me as he'll call me and say Wireman, just because we had both listened to the audio of Doomickey right around the same time, and I know he really loved that book as well.
Oh my God, I love that so much. That is so precious because Wireman he is such an incredibly special character, and I've talked with a lot of people. There's something about him. He is beloved.
Yeah.
Anytime that he is referenced in any way, it makes me happy.
Yeah, I mean, and then the audio just like rolls off the tongue too, like, sort of just the language of Wireman. Yeah.
That's what my friend Wireman says.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, we're gonna jump to a fun one. And I want to talk about your favorite Stephen King villains.
Oh.
Why do you like them?
I mean, there's so many. I'm going to maybe pick a couple that aren't as obvious. Although, I mean, I guess I'll start with Revival since we've already talked about it. I'm so bad with like story details, especially when I'm high on cold drugs. Like what I vividly remember are like bits and scenes and the emotions. But anyway, the priest from Revival. What do you remember? What's his name? Father Callahan? No,
that's Salem's Lot. You're close.
That's Salem's Lot. No,
Charlie something. Daniels. It's either Daniels or Charlie. I don't think it's Charlie Daniels because he's a country singer.
Right, he's a country singer.
But I think it's in the novel they call him the fifth business, so you can just say fifth business.
So I mean, if he's one of I think he is a villain. He's a very sort of tragic, sad villain because he's such a charismatic. In the opening of the book when he makes friends with, I think the kid is named Charlie. I think I probably should look this up.
Jamie, because it's my dad's name, and my dad's a guitar player, so that's how I always remember that one.
I've actually read this book 3 times, and this is how little I remember details sometimes. But the third time I read it, I had a concussion at the time. I was listening to the audio. But anyway.
I did not mean to laugh at your concussion.
Yeah, that's okay. No, it is sort of funny now in retrospect. Yeah, it's funny, like when I know it's not in any way a adaptation, and I'm not accusing Mike Flanagan of stealing anything, but one of the things I really loved about his series, Midnight Mass, was it felt like all these different King things, thrown in. And one of them to me was, the priest in Midnight Mass, played by Hamish. What the hell is that dude's name? So I'm just going to stop saying people's names because I obviously don't remember them. But he had that same charisma, like, that the priest had. And he had a similar sort of, sermon, like the sermon, the damn sermon, I think is what they refer to it when he's up there. It's such a powerful scene in the book. Yeah. I mean, and then you get this dude's whole arc as to like, obviously a priest, and then he has this horrible tragedy, just totally changes him. And then obviously sort of like his Lovecraftian discovery, something that, him and Jamie worked with. So to me, I think one of his most well-rounded, most human, fascinating villains for me. My other favorite, is this cheating because it was never a book, but I read the teleplay. It was published as a teleplay, but Storm of the Centuries, Linoge. Yeah. So good. Both obviously like reading it as a screenplay and then, seeing it on TV, just fantastic. And, it's my own book, The Cabin at the End of the World, deals with these strangers showing up with like this, apocalyptic sort of deal that's awful. Obviously, or I'd say subconsciously informed by Linoge's Storm of the Century, with the same sort of bargain that he offers the town.
Your taste is chef's kiss, sir. Oh
Well,
my
thanks.
God. I'm so thrilled that you picked a revival anti-hero / villain because you're right. We got to beef up that baby as much as we can so we could get it mainstream because it is spectacular. It is absolutely stellar. And Lenage, Storm of the Century is my favorite ever of all time. So I'm so glad you love him as much as I do.
I know it's on like Hulu now. I haven't rewatched it. I've been thinking about, oh, I have to rewatch it, but just been too busy. I would like to rewatch it.
Still slaps after all
Yeah.
this time. It is
Yeah.
still perfect. It's genius. It's timeless. I don't get it. It's great.
Absolutely.
We are gonna jump to a fun question I've been toying with. It's very brand new. I kind of toyed with it a little bit with John. We had a lot of fun with it, so I'm excited for your thoughts. So this was birthed from who would you like to see have their own sequel? For example, Danny had his sequel with Dr. Sleep. We have Holly getting her own standout novel. So you can pick a character who you are dying to have their own sequel, or you can tell me if you were given the blessing from Mr. King to write the sequel to Firestarter and take Charlie McGee into present day, what would you do? So I know it's kind of a loaded question. You can go in either direction.
Yeah. So I'll try to answer both, maybe briefish, but one with a caveat that, I'm not into prequels and sequels usually as a reader. Like Dr. Sleep is still one of the books I haven't read because I'm like, oh, I mean, The Shining is The Shining. Like I don't need to know. Like I just wasn't interested. I know a lot of people love prequels and sequels, so I mean that's just a me thing. So that said, but at the same time, maybe this is a cheat. I do love when a totally different story and then a character makes a guest appearance, or I love all the references to Castle Rock, or just like a glancing reference to another character. That's all I need. I don't need a full sequel a lot. That said, I would definitely read like a prequel novella about the Trash Can Man. I did a recent reread of The Stand because I got to write Christopher Golden and Brian Keene, a couple of horror writers, with the blessing of Stephen King, are putting out a anthology of stories set in the universe of The Stand. And so they asked me to write one, which is amazing. So I wanted to go back and reread The Stand and just reminded me how much I love Trash Can Man. So many characters, but I don't know. There's something really interesting there. As far as the Firestarter sequel goes, although actually now that we've been talking about Lenage, I would love to do a story about the kid that went off with Lenage. I mean, that would be cool.
Holy hell.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah. I'd be more excited to do that than the Firestarter one. Although if I did have to do one, and that would be a good problem to have, I think I would make Charlie sort of like a militant anarchist kind of character figure. And or as she gets older, she loses her power and she's like desperate to get it back. So there's a couple of different directions you can go, even though, it's pretty awful powers, So I don't know. Maybe either of those directions might be interesting.
Oh, obsessed. Love it. So good. I love she would be like a little bit La Femme Nikita. I know that that's an aging reference as well, but
Yeah.
you're on board.
I'm on board. Yeah.
She'd be a little La Femme Nikita, and then she would be at the tail end of that, like desperate and aging, and so good.
Yeah. Maybe especially if she's like middle age. Like we don't have enough books about people in their middle age, in our permanently youth obsessed culture. I did take advantage of that once when I was younger. But now that I'm getting older, how about more old folks? No, but that'd be really interesting that, I guess that's sort of almost like what Dr. Sleep is, right? Like, I mean, he's Danny's middle-aged alcoholic.
Yep.
I did see the movie. I'm sorry.
It's good.
Yeah. No, it was good. Yeah. So obviously, I guess I was interested enough to see the movie, but not enough to read it. Sorry, Steven. I've read 66. Cut me some slack.
I think Steve would agree. Flanagan, I mean, he's just tremendous, but he made some really smart decisions, and I think he improved the book, which is terrible to say, but
okay.
I think he improved it a little bit. Just saying.
I won't tell Uncle Steve.
I know. I could rationalize myself out of that, but I think even Steve would agree. He just made some very smart decisions, and I appreciated them. Hopefully I wouldn't get in too much trouble with Steve. I want to talk about the secondary reading experience. Are you somebody who got too much to do, read it once, moved on, or do you revisit? And what is that secondary, tertiary, quaternary? What is that experience like? And What do you get out of it? What do you notice about the passing of time?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more, like, I mean, I wish I had more time, period, but more time for rereads because I definitely get more out of the book a second time. And so with Stephen's books, I've done a lot of rereads by audiobook because, for so many of his books, I read them like 1993, 95, especially like sort of the classic ones. So then to like go back, now 20 or 30 years later to reread them, it's like, oh, I totally forgot about, most of this stuff. Or if it's, sometimes, well, I was gonna say it doesn't count if it was the movie and then I was watching the book. So for me, it's really more, especially now, that I've been writing novels too, it's a totally different experience as opposed to the young man kid I was in my early to mid 20s, hadn't even thought of writing anything. And now someone, who's written a bunch of books, just I mean, from that perspective, it's been really, I admire Stephen's work even more, just sort of seeing like what he does and how he does it. I shouldn't even say seeing how he does or how he does it because I don't know how he does it half the time. But just from like a craft and just a writing point of view, it's just it's really magical to see that. So like we talked with Revival, that's the one that jumps out the most to me is something that really changed upon the reread of it and just opened up. I'd say I loved Pet Sematary already, but listening to that as a reread in audio was like this. It cemented like this book is just absolutely brilliant, uncompromising, unflinching. It's just the whole book just has this tone. Like it's incredible. Like at the amount of words and pages that he writes, that he can have that just the oppressively dread fused tone for like that entire book.
Absolutely. You're dead on. I read Under the Dome during COVID,
Mm.
and a part of me wishes I would have never done that. But like, it was just amazing how wherever you are in life, even if you know what the story is, there's no
Yeah.
plot surprises, you know everything that's going to happen. It is somehow new because you're kind of new
Yeah.
in that stage of life. And I think that's why people read it every single year. People read The Stand multiple times.
Yeah.
I get it. And I get it. The older I get, the more I get it. It's you that is different.
Absolutely.
I like to hear about people's additional reading experiences because it's really special.
That's kind of why I put off rereading The Stand for so long, because that was like the book that helped turn me into a reader. I don't know. I just kind of want to leave that experience the way it was, but I was sort of forced to write this story. I mean, which is a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong.
Speaking of The Stand, I did have a question on Stephen King endings because I think over the years, this might have been a hot issue maybe a while back where Stephen King was criticized for not being able to end a book well. And I think a lot of people argue with that of saying, of course, he ends books well, but there are a few that we might touch upon where after
Sure.
1,000+ pages, it's a little challenging. This question is, have you ever encountered a Stephen King ending that was so unsatisfying it might have sullied your journey through the text as a whole?
So, I mean, obviously, I thought about this answer before, but I had a hard time coming up with one, and partly it's because, like, again, this is very subjective. This is just a me as a reader. Like, endings tend, like, even bad ones tend not to ruin books for me. They'll ruin movies occasionally, but not books, because they're different experiences, right? A book, if you're watching a television program or a movie, you are a very passive, for the most part, very you're passive in that sort of exchange. Whereas when you're reading, you're very active. You're putting your experience into it. There's that weird, fun reader writer mind meld, and like you have to do some of the work. Like you have to picture, like you have to imagine these things. You have to do the work. So almost without fail, like to me, most of the value I get from a book has come from like all that work that I put in and that I was willing to put in because I was with a writer. So, I mean, sure, there's endings that sort of frustrate me. And maybe it's for some of the longer books, like, its ending, which I know a lot of people don't like. I would tend to agree. But, that's not the part like I remember about it, obviously. Or maybe not obviously. Like when I think about it, I don't think about the spider ending at all. Maybe again, because it was like over 7 books, maybe there was more of that television movie reaction to an ending of something where it's like, I read all that for this. And I didn't hate the ending to The Dark Tower. It sort of fit, but it was also frustrating. But I think maybe that might be part of the point too. The more removed I get from that, from that experience of reading The Dark Tower.
I gotcha. I love that. I love the active and passive. That's such a great thing to keep in mind, especially for an ending. You mentioned the Dark Tower, and I do have a
Yeah.
question about that. So I think we're going to head in that direction. But before we do, unfortunately, I have a little bit of a caveat because I haven't finished the series yet.
Oh, okay. I hope I didn't say anything.
You didn't,
Okay, good.
but just in case,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel so bad that I haven't finished it because I know people really want to. I get it, and I feel like trash. It's so embarrassing.
No, it's quite okay.
I'm just about to start Wolves of the Calla. So I'm excited. I'm passionate about the tower.
Yeah.
I haven't read the last 3 books, so just a
Okay.
heads up there. But this question is, what are your thoughts on the Dark Tower?
Yeah, I mean, it's an astounding achievement. I definitely enjoyed it. I was super into it. In We sort of mentioned earlier, I like sort of how the Dark Tower would bleed into some of his other stuff, or how some of his other stuff would bleed into the Dark Tower. Things like the Talisman. I think it's both ways too. Like the Talisman mentions some Dark Tower-y stuff and vice versa. Eventually, I don't know if it has happened yet by the time you hit Wolves of the Kala. I remember really, I think for me, like book 4 was like the height of sort of my Dark Tower like enthusiasm because it's an amazing book with such a devastating ending and so well written and well done. I feel like it was almost like it built up to 4, and then it was like similarly like a deceleration. But also for me, because my memory is so shitty for characters and stuff, by the time maybe that's why I don't like reading sequels because I forget what they did in book 1 or book 2. So that definitely could be a me problem as well. But no, I would definitely recommend the Dark Tower series for sure.
Wizard and Glass was amazing. It took me a while to emotionally recover from that.
Yeah.
I really struggled with the pain of being a reader for that.
Yeah,
It was so exceptional.
it was. And I know at the beginning I wasn't sure. I was like, do I want to read like him going back into the past, very much into the drawing of the three and all the modern stuff. And then it's like it really takes almost like a break to go back. But yeah, it's amazing. It's a great book.
100%. This next question, we're going to jump to a fun one in regards to Stephen King settings. If they knocked on your door and said, Paul, they need you to help write an 8-episode miniseries on the adaptation of Revival, because that's my nightly prayer,
Mm.
or the Firestarter sequel, and you get to magically transport yourself to a Stephen King setting to get this finished. It can be the Overlook before it burned down. It can be someplace chill and happy like Joyland. Where would you choose?
Oh, I probably need something chill and happy so I survive. Like Joyland, I guess. That's a good bring up. I was gonna say Castle Rock in general, but I'd probably be in really big trouble. Where was the body set? I wouldn't get into any supernatural trouble in the body.
Harlow, Maine.
Arlo, Maine.
Pretty sure, because everything goes down that I love in Harlow. I've noticed
Ah,
Harlow is bopping, Paul. It is
yeah.
so
What
cool.
else is in Harlow?
Revival, that's where it
Oh,
starts.
oh yeah. Okay.
Also, a short story I love in If It Bleeds, which is Mr. Harrigan's phone.
Okay. That's a very good story. Yeah.
Then I'm drawing a blank, of course, but those three. So
Oh,
Revival, The Body, Mr. Harrigan's phone, all Harlow.
I know he was sneakily building up Harlow behind my back. All right, we'll go with Harlow then. Yeah.
I think it's pretty desolate out there, but it'd be private and quiet.
Yeah, need the quiet. Just you bury a guy with the phone. Just ignore the ringing phone. Stay away from anyone trying to like do static electricity tricks. I think then I'd be okay in Harlow.
Perfect. Yep. And Mr. Harrigan had a very nice estate, so I'm sure that's open to the public.
Yeah, right.
Stay
Yeah.
there for a while. I'm with you. I'm building an Airbnb nearby.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love that. That has never been an answer. So I love that so
Yeah.
much.
Okay.
Raise the roof for Harlow. Okay. This is in regards to chit-chatting about non-Stephen King readers. This question is mostly coming from when I was in grad school with a lot of snobby snobs. And they really, really have this awkward face when I mention
Yeah.
my love of Stephen King. It's a little snobberoo in there.
Yeah.
When you talk with non-King readers who maybe want to know about which King path to take or your recommendations, or what do you recommend for non-King readers?
Hmm. It's funny. Well, I mean, there's obvious ones. Seeming obvious to me, but for the snooty MFA people, I would maybe think everything is eventual because there's a couple of stories in there that I believe were first printed in the New Yorker.
Yeah.
That feeling you can only say in French is one of them. That was in the New Yorker first prior to that book. It's funny. So like as a high school teacher, I always mention like, have you ever, well, actually, I could do this more successfully like 10 years ago because now maybe not as many kids have seen Shawshank Redemption, but different seasons is sort of an obvious place that you could go because three of those four aren't really horror stories. Although, I mean, apt people, I should say that two of the four aren't like full horror. Then, have you ever heard Stephen? He has a very fun anecdote about Shawshank. When he was being interviewed live, like he told the story. It was very funny. He said that he was in a grocery store in Florida, and a woman stopped. She's like, "You're that guy, right? You're the guy that writes that creepy stuff, Stephen King." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't write just that." Like, no, I'm butchering it. She said, like, "Why don't you write something that's it doesn't have to be so horror and icky. Why don't you write something hopeful and uplifting, something like that Shawshank Redemption?" He said, "I wrote that." She said, "No, you didn't."
I love it.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's sort of the obvious one. Yeah, no, I guess I'll stick with everything as eventual as the sort of backup.
I'm so glad you mentioned that collection because it's very underrated and there are some diamonds in there that were in the New Yorker. You're dead on. And yeah, that's the way for the snooty snoots. I got to get them with, this was an Esquire, this was in.
Yeah.
I also like to, when he riffs on another author's style so brilliantly, he plays with Raymond Carver a lot and
Mm,
also Flannery O'Connor.
right.
And so I always shove those at them. Here, observe
Yeah.
the brilliance. Okay, we are trucking along here. We're going to segue into the fun ones. This question is in regards to your favorite Stephen King duo, friendship, team,
Mm.
bromance, or romantic couple. Do you really enjoy?
I had a hard time. I mean, because there are so many. But I mean, the kid me, Wolf and Jack from The Talisman. Even though that's one of the few I haven't reread in so long. I think that's one I kind of want to leave as like, oh, that was early in my King reading. It was really exciting. And I was actually at the time, I was in grad school. When I was reading King books, I had like a soundtrack. I was listening to a punk band called Pennywise, fittingly, while I was reading The Talisman. And the album is called The Unknown Road. And the band name, obviously, so it fit perfectly. It was just, super fast, thrashy punk songs and it fit. So anyway, yeah, Wolf and Jack. I'm a sucker for like a werewolf or a wolf transformation. I think my other one is like a favorite doomed tragic couple, Johnny Smith and Sarah. Their story to me is just so heartbreaking, so well done, both in the book and in print. Actually, I know we're not in video here, but I'll show you. There's a dude who makes one-off one-off action figures called Read Full Things, and he made a Johnny Smith one-off that he sells them on eBay because they're kind of expensive. But he said there was some mistake on it, and I can't really see much of a mistake, so I got it for somewhat cheap. But yeah, so Johnny and Sarah.
Paul held up an action figure of Christopher Walken
Oh yeah, this is Christopher Walken.
from the
Yeah.
Dead Zone as Frank Dodd. Oh, I love that. That's amazing.
Oh no, this is him as Johnny Smith. Like
Oh,
Christopher
that's
Walken is
right.
Johnny Smith. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God. Brain fart.
I
Totally.
forget who Frank Dodd is. He's a definite character actor. I don't like his face is familiar to me, but
That's right. I forgot because what's so horrible is Christopher Walken is such a creepy person for me in life.
yeah,
His features have always been
yes,
so. I automatically associated him with Frank Dodd. That is
right.
horrible
That's
when
funny.
he is John Smith. What am I doing?
Yeah, no, he has such melancholy in that movie. I think I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about favorite adaptations later. We can talk more about the Dead Zone, but yeah,
Oh, Johnny and Sarah, great choice. So good.
yeah.
To this day, granted, I haven't finished everything, but I think Johnny and Sarah, I have not found anything to beat it. They have the most romantic date in all
Hmm.
of the King stuff
Yeah,
I've read. It is so precious and genuine. The authenticity of them falling
yeah.
in love incredible.
Yeah. That's something the book does better than the movie. Because the movie, they just do shorthand essentially, but yeah.
Totally. Oh, I'm glad you mentioned them. So, so good. Another fun one. This is going into animals. Favorite
Animals.
favorite Stephen King four-legged creature or two legs, I don't know.
Yeah.
More legs.
Yeah.
Who do you enjoy in the King universe?
So I wrote down a couple, and one I'm ashamed to say, I was at a Gothic fiction conference. They had me come and speak and read a story, and they did a fun trivia contest afterwards. And the question was, what's the name of the pet in Pet Cemetery? I'll admit to having had a couple of beers. That's gonna be my blame. But for some reason, I got like the wrong name stuck on my head. Judge. It's like, no, it's Church. So I got it wrong. So how can I forget Church? So anyway, Church in Pet Cemetery is a favorite, especially when she comes back. So I picked two kind of creepy ones. And Cujo. Cujo is my other favorite animal in the Stephen King universe. I know there's more like certainly heroic pets and animals, but how can you not think of Cujo, especially as someone who's had dogs? And my grandparents had next to them, there was a giant Cujo dog.
St. Bernard.
St. Bernard, yeah. So, and we were definitely like, that's Cujo. But his name was worse. It was Logi, Logi. Yeah, it's like total Cujo. Awful. It was just barking at us, snarling. I thought St. Bernard was supposed to be nice and friendly.
My cousin Jane has one. She's like this petite girl, this giant dog. I've noticed that's a thing. I don't know how it's a thing, but every St. Bernard is Cujo for me.
Yeah. Is her Cujo friendly?
Very friendly. His name is Simeon. He's very slobbery.
It's not Simeon. It's Cujo.
It is. Cujo, it's not Simeon. I know I
Yeah.
usually wear a lot of dresses and I'm like, Sim, I love you, but if you get
Yeah.
slobber on my dress.
Oh, yeah. Can't do slobber dogs. I love dogs, but yeah, I could not own a slobbery dog.
He's real slobbery, bless him.
Yeah.
But love Church. Love Church. Little Churchill.
Yeah.
I think the movie, it's like a fluffy cat. So I always envision a very fluffy Persian cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
She didn't ask to be brought back.
She did not. Yeah.
They were good at the start. So really good choices.
Yeah. Thanks.
Let us segue and jump over to the land of television and film. Let's talk about your favorites.
So, we mentioned, Storm of the Century is like the Dead Zone, I think, is one of the best adaptations where both like the book and the film are excellent and they're very close, but the differences that the movie does actually work and make sense. You get the classic line from from Christopher Walken, "The ice is going to break." That's not in the book, but I want to put it in there somewhere. Misery, I think, is somewhat of an obvious choice in terms of, I mean, it's an excellent movie. And again, the differences make sense. The movie really couldn't get into the book that he was actually writing like the book does. And probably wise to not go as violent as the book did. Not that I'm against violence, but running over people with lawnmowers, stuff like that. Like that would have been tough to pull off. And I'm sorry, Stephen, I do love The Shining. It's like one of my favorites. And that's a case of where, both are quite different. I do think, they're certainly in conversation with each other. I like that there is both. I've been very fortunate to have had one of my books made into a movie, so I can a little bit more understand Stephen's perspective on, something being made and maybe being disappointed with aspects of it. But also, like, I think it sounded like Kubrick was way more sort of combative about the whole thing and was kind of shitting on the book. I don't know, like they had a fight in the press, so I don't know like which came first or who came first, but there's that side of it too. I don't know. Oh, Pet Cemetery, it's another absolutely great one. Yeah, I think the only thing with the movie that it just doesn't work is when Gage, he's just not scary. Like they made a mistake of showing him in full face. Like maybe if you just kept shadow, so like you don't fully get to see what he looks like. I think that might have been the way to go. I don't know. How about you? Have I missed any? Have I missed some of your favorites?
You've got some good ones. Storm of the Century, absolutely essential. You mentioned you like Dr. Sleep. I really, really enjoyed that one.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I'm drawing a huge blank. Oh, Shawshank and Green Mile.
Oh, yeah.
Those are a shoo-in. Everybody. Darabont, they're perfect.
I'm going to give you one that I don't like the adaptation because I hate the freaking ending. Poison. The Mist. And people love the movie The Mist. I think the ending is total bullshit. And it's not because it's bleak. Like I've written my share of bleak endings. It's because it's totally unearned and it makes no sense. And it feels like a cheap Twilight Zone sort of trick. And I shouldn't say cheap and Twilight Zone together because often the Twilight Zone wasn't like a trick. But the idea that I forget the character's name, the religious crazy who runs out. It's like, you have to leave and follow me. She's a jerk the whole time.
Yeah.
Not only does she survive, but she brings back, how does she survive? She brings back the army. And what? The army with helicopters blows away the mist. It's just so, no. And like, he wouldn't have chosen to just start shooting everybody that soon. It was way too quick. Yeah. So, yeah, I I can go on and on about the ending of the movie Mist.
I respect that. I think when I first saw it, the shock of it, I
Yeah.
was very numb and I just kind of threw my hands up with it and was like, well,
Yeah.
but yeah, when you really present that evidence, it's no bueno. It's like, I just let it go because it was such a pothole you fall into.
Yeah.
It's very desperate and rash and okay. So, Miss Carmody, that religious nutcase, she's a really good king villain that I like to discuss and pull apart in various investigations of Stephen King females. Yeah, I forgot she lived. What the hell? That's dumb.
In the movie, anyway, yeah.
Dumb.
No, she just sort of disappears. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've read the story.
Dumb. Shake my head.
Yeah.
Nope. Okay, we are progressing nicely. So I have two really fun questions, and then, yeah, we're kind of making our way to the end. This question is from my immense hatred for the character of Big Jim Rennie from Under the Dome. This question was kind of created with him in mind, because I'm asking, have you ever encountered someone in the King universe, could be villain, anti-hero, antagonist, you just actually wanted to physically hurt them if they were real? You really would put hands and throw hands on on this character.
Well, I mean, we just discussed one.
Yeah.
Sort of the religious zealotry characters definitely push buttons with me. Yeah, so you choose like Carrie's mom. I don't know, I haven't read Under the Dome.
It's a lot.
What the hell? The kid in The Stand who lives in the same town as Franny. Why? Harold. Yeah. Yeah, Harold definitely, even like on the reread, I had a visceral reaction to Harold. Like, he was an evil character, but just so conniving and Weasley. And not like a fun, evil, like trash can man. Who's, again, a little bit tragic. Like, there's a reason why he is. Where Harold, I mean, you sort of are given a reason why he is. He's overweight, has terrible skin, and obviously didn't have a great school experience, but wasn't enough to make you feel like, oh, like, not that you wanted to sympathize with him, but empathize with him. So, I don't know. I definitely would have liked to have smacked Harold around, I guess.
Love it. Great choice. I have a lot of issues with Harold. I'm with you. I know a lot of people think he has a really nice arc and blah, 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 but I'm like, no, you're a piece of shit, Harold. You are a piece of shit. And the shit is it's like to my eyeballs. I cannot see anything but your awfulness. So, no, I feel you. Good choice.
Thanks.
This is another brand new question, but on the opposite end. It's a nice one.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have a character in your King reading that you might have felt attraction towards? You really like this character, might have a crush on them. That's
hilarious. It was funny, like when you sent some of these questions, I quickly wrote, nah. I don't know. Like, it's hard. I don't think I do. But I mean, I sort of, the characters I like, I definitely remember and sort of, hang with them. And I'm just really remembering now the Buick 8 novel. Why am I spacing on the rest of the title? From a Buick 8. Yeah. Why was I missing the from part? I don't know if there's anyone who had a crush in that book, but I think that's an overlooked one. Because it's so overlooked, I just remembered it. I would like to reread that one. So the short answer, I'm sorry, I'm stalling. I don't think so. I mean, maybe, when I was reading it as like a 22, 23-year-old, I would probably admit to all sorts of crushes, but none that have stuck with me. How about you?
I'm glad you asked, Paul. Yes. And it took me by surprise. Billy Summers. I don't know if you've read that one.
Yeah, I have.
Well, Billy Summers really did it for me.
Ah,
I don't know how that happened, but he ticks all the boxes of like my current partner who I'm with now, or the
yeah,
men I'm attracted to, which is
sure.
the very quiet, reserved, calculating ones that are very mysterious and brooding.
Mhm.
That is my jam. And
Okay.
and so I just fell in love with him. He's that Sigma male
Yeah,
where they just don't care. They do their own thing, rebel without a cause. That was him. And
yeah.
I picked up what Steve was putting down. Let me tell you, I was so into it, Paul.
Yeah,
That was the first time that's ever happened. And I was like, I
interesting.
wonder if this has happened to anybody else. So,
I should have like a list of the books sitting in front of me. I'd better be able to think about that. I mean, maybe the closest was because we might talk about other female characters, but like Nadine, especially when I first read it, I felt so bad for
oh,
her, the kind of that I wanted to save her. So sometimes maybe that equates to like when I was 22 to reading it, like somewhat of a crush, more like I have to save this woman, from although what am I going to do against the walking dude? Not too much. Yeah, I mean, and also like in the TV adaptation, Giacomo was her last name. I think I had sort of a crush on the actor back in the day, in the 90s for sure. So maybe that combination, I will admit to something.
that's a great choice. Nadine, I love her.
Yeah,
She needed saving, man. Like she was really in a crap situation. And I always defend her with people that insult her because she is
yeah,
this villain queen, sort of. But it's like she was manipulated her whole life. What do you
yeah.
expect?
No, very reluctant. Yeah, I see her as a definite tragic figure.
Were you able to catch the newsstand adaptation that was like 2020 from, I think it was on Paramount Plus, because Amber Heard played Nadine and
Yeah,
she's real foxy, I think. I mean,
mhm.
she's an American beauty. And
Yeah,
so I liked it. Her performance was kind of panned, but I didn't think it
yeah.
was that bad.
I only watched like the first episode, wasn't into it, and I soon stopped subscribing to Paramount. So like that's like one of the few streamers I don't have. So yeah, I didn't go back to it.
I think you were not alone.
Yeah. Harold was really annoying in that again. Like, yeah.
You didn't miss anything either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Nadine's a good choice. Solid, solid. I've never heard that one too.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes me even more happy.
Who did John say? I should just listen, I suppose. Did John get this question?
He did. Oh gosh,
It's okay if you don't remember. I'll ask him.
right? I don't think it was anybody. He was very, very punk rock about it.
Oh,
He was like, "No,
well,
I
he
don't."
clearly has a secret crush on Wireman, and he keeps calling me Wireman, so I think that's probably the answer.
You're right. Huge love for Wireman. Huge
Yeah.
love, which I support wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it would have stood out if he said it. So I feel like
He ducked it.
he did.
Yeah.
Reversed right on out of there. I could be wrong
Uh,
though, and I'm just having a brain blip.
that's all right.
What a cheeky charmer that Mr. Langan. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We should have like what Stephen King character is most like John Langan. Oh,
Oh, I love this.
I'd
Oh,
have to think about that.
right.
Hmm.
Dear, let me look at my bookshelf now.
Is there like a teacher character in like Hearts of Atlantis or something?
Oh, Hearts and
You need like a
Atlantis.
professor character.
We do. Teacher, teacher, teacher.
Uh,
The only one that comes to mind is a very like scary story from Night Shift. It's Sometimes They Come Back. He was a
yeah.
teacher. That did not
Okay.
go well.
No, he wasn't that nice of a guy either, from what I recall.
Could he be like a lovable Bill Hodges? Could Langan be a
Oh
detective?
yeah, I could see that.
I get that because Bill's delightful,
Yeah.
especially when he gets a little romantic attention. He's no fuss, no frills.
John's a lot of frills. No, I'm just kidding. Like maybe he would be Hodges mixed with the pontificating side of the revival priest that were there, at least that I'm forgetting his name. Just because, John, like you can listen to John. John could talk people into doing things because he's,
Yes.
yes, very loquacious and charming in that way.
Yes. All day. Take my money, John
So
Langan.
now I'm ready to make him into the store owner of Needful Things, slash
Oh,
Satan. But yeah.
The benevolent version of Leland
Yeah,
Gaunt.
right. Okay. Yeah. Leland Gaunt. Yeah. That's his name.
He's like the nice Leland.
He's John Gaunt.
Oh man, I love it. I hope he listens to that. I'm gonna like
Yeah.
make him listen to this.
Okay.
He's gonna love it. But yeah, I was basically like, John, we're best friends now, okay? So
Yeah.
he went along with it. All right. I don't know if you possess one of these things. You might, but if you were able to get a king title signed by Mr. King, which one? Only one.
Only one.
Which one would you choose?
I would probably choose a stand
Nice.
just because that started me on my path to reading. But I'm going to brag that I have the following book signed. His Red Sox book, Faithful, that he co-wrote with Stuart and Ann, because I am and was friends with Stuart at the time. So for Christmas, Stuart sent me a copy of the book that was signed by him and Stephen King. And I've since, because my wife works for like a New England chain of pizza places called Papa Gino's. And if you've ever been to New England, it's Papa Gino's. It's only in New England. Papa Gino's D'Angelo's. At the time, doing a promotion with Big Papi David Ortiz. So I have that book signed by Onan, King, and Ortiz, which is really cool.
Dang.
I don't think anyone else has that.
That's huge. That
Yeah.
is sexy. I like
Yeah.
that. Are you a Red Sox fan?
I am. Can I tell you one more story?
Of
Because I haven't told this
course.
one about that book. So that was the summer of 2004. Stuart is like a friend mentor to me, and I just probably only met him for about a year, but we were emailing every day. And so like he was talking about how he and Steven were writing this book, basically emailing back and forth about the Red Sox. And to their great luck, that was the year that they won the World Series. So when I got that book for Christmas, it's like, oh, cool. Like, yeah. And I'm start to read it. And I was like, geez, I wonder if I'm mentioned in this book at all. Because, I said this to my wife, Lisa, like, I wonder if I'm in the book. Like, I was emailing Stuart a lot. And Lisa's like very laid back and doesn't get mad or upset. But weirdly, she was like, it's not all about you, And I was like, oh, that was like a really strong reaction. Was not expecting that. So anyway, as I'm reading, it's like, hey, there's this part where it says my friend Paul's wife, Lisa, got me some signed baseballs by Nomar. And I showed it to her, expecting her to say like, hey, sorry. Oh, you're in the book. But she said, I'm in the book. So Lisa's actually mentioned twice in the book. I think I mentioned once. So she has more mentions than I do.
Dude.
That doesn't seem fair.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So fun story. Stuart and Ann, one of the nicest, most gracious people you could ever meet.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up. This is a King book I love. Super underrated. Does not get enough love at all. But I love it. The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Yeah.
Which has a lot of Red Sox all over it. And have you read that one?
I have. It's been a long time. I remember being into it. I also remember thinking, oh, she picked Tom Gordon as her favorite player.
Who should she have picked?
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, he was like, I think good for a year or two or something like that. I can foresee, I think it was just poor timing. It would have been better if it was, I don't know, The Girl Who Loved. Well, really, Keith Folk was the closer in 2004, but like he really only lasted a year. So I guess Tom Gordon is fine.
I'm a baseball fan.
Yeah.
Grew up playing it. Not well. Did not have the talent. I was the worst third baseman you've ever seen. But I tried hard and I threw hard. I just didn't throw accurately. So, my poor father. Thankfully, he had two sons to compensate for my inadequacy. But someday, I love the East. I always have a blast when I go over there. But someday, I need to do a full Red Sox Fenway experience. I need to do it.
Yeah, it's cool. The seats are really small. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a place you want to visit once. And it's in a cool part of Boston. Lots of stuff to do.
I'm an American. We have to do this. We must.
Okay, do it.
But that's actually one of the things I love about King's writing is his passion for baseball, because it's actually, I feel privileged that I know the game and I know how to play it and I enjoy it live. And I'm able to connect with my dad with it.
Yeah.
And we went on a road trip and I made him listen to Blockade Billy, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And that's one I haven't read. I think that was co-written with Stuart, right? I probably should read that.
I'll double check.
I think it was.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Put that at the top of your queue because it's got old school baseball speak.
Yeah.
The whole thing, all the colloquialisms are really old school. It's great, but it's so polarizing to international readers because it's just
too much baseball.
Too much baseball. But if you do like the game, you know these players and teams, it's magical. Those who get baseball get like this extra VIP King experience, I think.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's good to know. I'll have to check it out.
But yeah, I feel bad for all the international folks. I'm like, I'm sorry, honey. I'm sorry. Just come. Just come. We'll go to a game.
Yeah.
We'll teach you.
Yeah.
It's like cricket. It's fine. You'll get it.
Right.
All right, my friend. We have one more. This is the last question. We did it. Your top 5 Stephen King titles. You do have wiggle room for more. They can be novella collections, short story collections, whatever you want.
I wrote these down. Where did I write them down? Where did I write them down? Because I don't want to. We need theme music to tie this over. Because I spent time thinking about this. So if I do it from memory, I'll be upset that I got some wrong. What the heck? Oh no, I didn't fully answer it. I only wrote down 3, but I will do 2 more.
Okay.
I have to keep The Stand number 1, even if it might not be like at this moment in my life favorite book of his I've read. It's the most important to me. Pet Sematary is there. So is Revival. Dead Zone. Geez, what's number 5? I feel like number 5 is a really important choice.
Right.
I'm trying. I guess part of these like fighting with going with obvious choices, but I'm going to do a tie then between somewhat obvious choices. Jesus, what was I just going to say? A tie between Different Seasons and Salem's Lot.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's an amazing list. Classic.
I think it could have been better. Yeah, I mean, because there's so many other ones that we could have mentioned, like From a Buick Cage is great. Bag of Bones is like one of my favorite scenes. Like, I don't know how he did it. I had that briefly down. I was like, maybe you could mention that to literary folks, but the scene where, the dude is in the bathtub and like, he doesn't know, like he's about to do something awful. And I don't know either. And there's like a moment where you, the reader, are realizing at the same time he's realizing. And I was like, it's a really like gasp, shocking moment. I was like, man, how did he do that? Anyway, so it doesn't make the top 5 though. So I don't know why I'm mentioning it.
I need to reread Bag of Bones. The ending really wrecked me like forever.
Yeah.
I'd like to reread it because I think he was channeling Rebecca, which is one of my favorite Gothic novels ever.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The fact that he's riffing on it makes me very happy. But
yeah,
the darkest thing from King I've ever read is that assault scene at the end. Like, I've never read anything like that from him in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I don't know if I could go back.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping there's nothing darker than that in the King.
Yeah.
If there is, let me know, Paul. I need to know.
Yeah. Okay. Will do.
Really great list. We have made it through all the questions, Mr. Tremblay. So this is the part in the show where you can tell everybody what you're up to. John mentioned that StokerCon's coming up. Something?
Something? Yeah, StokerCon is at the end of May. I'm one of the guests of honor, which is an honor, which is really cool. So that'll be fun. It'll be in sunny San Diego. It better be sunny. But for me, like the big thing that's coming is my novel, Horror Movie, a Novel, is coming out on June 11th. The incredibly clever title, Horror Movie, a Novel. So I'm hoping people are excited about that. Hopefully people consider pre-order. If you do pre-order the first printing, book has like really, they're going to spray paint the edges of the book red, which is really cool. Yeah, again, we're not on camera. I could show you, but I can't show everybody else.
Oh, give me that VIP.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
Well, I'm getting that book out. And also, like, Barnes & Noble is going to sell an exclusive edition. Like, support your indies, please. Like, hope maybe the next book will do exclusive stuff for indie bookstores. But in this case, the Barnes & Noble will have like 16 pages of 2 essays. One essay is basically like a liner notes like Stephen King does for his short story collections, essentially. There's a long essay of like how I wrote the book, where it came from, and thoughts on movies and stuff like that. And then there's a bit about, I give a list of what I think are overlooked movies in keeping with, I guess, the theme of horror movie. Yeah, so there's The Red Edges.
Oh my God.
Because the movie is sort of a riff on a cursed movie. These 20-somethings made a movie in 1993, independent, very art house, pretentious, disturbing horror movie, my favorite kind. And it didn't make it to screens. Something terrible happened on set, and now it's 30 years later. And the man who played a character called the Thin Kid, he's never named in the book, is basically telling the story of what happened on set and talking about his experience going through a big budget reboot now. And the book includes like the entire screenplay of the original movie too. So hopefully it's fun. Like it bounces around and hopefully it does weird things with people's brains. I think it's pretty disturbing. So far, the responses have been really good to it. So knock on wood.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I will be pre-ordering in a
Thank
matter
you.
of minutes. I'm so excited. It looks beautiful.
They did a really nice job with the design. Thank you. No, it is very nice. And actually, they're going like overboard for the audiobook too. So I mentioned that there's screenplay parts. So they're going to have the audio reader read the book as it goes. But after they read a screenplay part, they're going to stop and have actors do like a table read of that screenplay section. And then, then they'll continue with the rest of the story. And then as you hit a screenplay part, the same thing. They'll read it, but then they'll do like a table read. It sounds like a really cool idea. So yeah, if people are audio folks, it sounds like the audiobook might be fun.
Oh my God, Paul, my mouth is agape. You had me at mixed media. Oh my God, there's going to be mixed media. Obsessed. I'm there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I wish my brain was better at remembering things. I even wrote stuff down. I still was like fumbling for names and things.
It's a tall order. You did amazing. Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you. Yeah, like I said, that's the reader I am. Like I remember how things made me feel. I forget names.
That's the important part.
Well, thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I'm the same. I write down notes. I do the little podcast and I don't know, an hour later, can't remember.
Yeah.
I think that's because we're just special and great.
I agree. That's exactly what it is.
All right, sir, I will let you get back to your evening. This was an absolute joy. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Jeez. I should have emailed Steve to tell him I was doing this.
Oh, God. Wow.
I should have sent him a question. What do you think is your least most overrated or most underrated? No, I'm just kidding.
He is a delight. I don't think he'll ever find this little show, but he might. And if he doesn't, it's okay. I'm not one that I'm like, I need to talk to Steve. I don't. I'm just happy he's here and writing. And I love the community. I love the friends I make. That's what gives me the jollies.
Nice.
Because if I ever talked to him, I would self-destruct. I would just be a bozo of blabbering, drooling. I would be terrible.
And then John Langan would have to take over the show, and I would be forced to like make fun of the show, and it would just it would be bad.
There you go. You got it. Thank you so much. Again, this has been magic. Take care.
Thanks, Kim. All right.
Well, good buddies, I believe that was a mic drop. 'Twas a home run indeed. As Paul runs the bases, I'm going to continue clapping and cheering because, wow, what a joy. Thank you so much to Mr. Tremblay for his time and his thoughts on King. I am so incredibly grateful for our chat. Be sure to get your hands on the pre-order of Paul's new novel, Horror Movie, so when it's released next month, you're ready. I highly recommend the sexy hardcover with the red pages. Make sure you put that one in your cart. Please also check out A Knock at the Cabin, the 2023 film directed by M. Night Shyamalan based on Paul's novel, A Cabin at the End of the World. I'm going to be watching it this weekend, and I'll report back. If anyone is in the Southern California area, specifically San Diego, make sure you have your tickets to StokerCon, because not only will Paul Tremblay be in attendance to sign all your books, but also his good pal Wireman, aka John Langan, and friend of the podcast Neil McRobert from the Talking Scared podcast. Last I checked, all three of them will be there, so it's going to be a mighty array of tremendous talent from three lovely gentlemen who have all been so very kind to this little podcast of mine. If this is your first visit to the podcast and you enjoyed this interview, I invite you to stay and hang out with me here on the Year of Underrated Stephen King podcast a little while longer. If you want even more fun, I highly recommend you check out my brand new Patreon called The Danse Macabre with Kim C, which can be found at patreon.com/dancewithkimc. That is dance with an S, where I'm doing something King related and totally off the wall each week. And this month, I'm going to do something I've never done before, which is to read and podcast on a brand new Stephen King title, hot off the presses. The 2024 short story collection entitled You Like It Darker is set to release here in America on May 21st, and I will quickly commentate and record my thoughts on the Patreon, so it is a very exclusive, very VIP space. So if your plan is to follow in the footsteps of many a constant reader out there and read it the day it comes out, join me on the Patreon so we can read along together and have a grand old time. If you would like to say hello and provide any thoughts, recommendations, feedback, or personal anecdotes on your own Stephen King journey, I'm all ears. You can find me on Instagram, X, Threads, and Facebook, but just a heads up, I'm not on Facebook a lot. The place I am on the most, though, is the email account, which is underratedsk@gmail.com. I will answer you back promptly if you would like to reach out and say hi. For links to the socials, please check the show notes. We are also on YouTube, so please subscribe there as well. Coming up in future episodes, I am still hoping to get my Return to Duma Key episode off the ground here as soon as possible. I know it's been a little bit of a delay, but it's because Duma has to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. It's beautiful. I adore that novel so much. But it's been on one of the side burners because I'm trying to finish up the Bill Hodges trilogy and compose some of my thoughts on End of Watch, which has really been difficult. Ugh, it's a little tricky. I'm gonna do it. But then I'm also getting sidetracked with The Outsider because, as you all know, my book club is currently participating in The Road to Holly Gibney, where we are reading every installment she is in, and The Outsider is so badass. It is so boss. I love it so much. And I would rather focus on an Outsider episode. I am just being pulled in a dozen different directions, my friends. But overall, coming up, Duma Key, End of Watch, The Outsider, and I shall return to the path of the beam, the path I want to be on, and soon I will commence reading for the very first time Wolves of the Calla. I promised, and I'm going to keep my promise to all of y'all and to myself, most importantly. I can't wait. Wolves of the Calla is coming. But yes, my guys, so stay tuned for all of that at some point. Lots to get done. All right, my loves. As mentioned, I have a ton of King stuff to do, so I'm going to get to it. But thank you once more to Paul Tremblay and to all of you for being here. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.